Hi there, I'm Marcy. On my wedding day, right in front of friends, cameras, and champagne toasts, my parents handed me a frame that read, "To our biggest disappointment." They called it a joke, laughed like it was clever, but that was just the beginning. They'd already stolen my ideas, used my money behind my back, and twisted my silence into a weapon. And I let it happen. For years. Why? Because I thought love meant staying quiet. There's something eerie about Southern silence. It stretches long, like the moss-covered oaks hanging low over the grounds of Willow Creek Manor. Beautiful, deliberate, and hiding more than it shows. That's exactly how the day felt. My wedding day. Savannah in late spring is the kind of picturesque people book photographers for, but that day felt like something else, like a stage set too perfectly. The sky was gold, the strings played soft, and I smiled until my jaw ached. Everyone assumed I was the kind of bride who'd cry tears of joy at the altar. Instead, I was just trying to keep my hands from trembling. Jonas looked at me like I was magic. That part was real. He held my hand through the entire ceremony like it tethered him to this world. If I had any doubt left about saying yes, he erased it with one look when the officiant asked if I was ready to begin again. And yet, deep inside me, there was a knot that hadn't loosened in years. It was tied to something no wedding could fix. My family. I should have known better than to expect anything different. I'd convinced myself maybe, just maybe, they'd show up for me like I'd shown up for them all these years. But hope has a way of making a fool out of people like me. My mother, Avis, made her entrance fashionably late, dressed in taupe shimmer that caught the light and demanded attention, her signature move. She air-kissed my cheek like I was a co-worker, not her daughter, and whispered, "You're not late, that's good," as if I'd ever been the problem. Then came Delphine. White dress, no irony. Her heels clicked on the stone like a warning shot. She smiled like she knew something I didn't. There was no, "You look stunning," or "Congratulations." Just that grin she always wore when she'd rigged a game and couldn't wait to watch me lose. I told myself not to read too much into it. Maybe I was just tired or nervous or still carrying old wounds in a new dress. But that illusion cracked a few hours earlier while the florist was setting up, and I went back inside for a moment of quiet. Passing the kitchen hallway, I heard her voice, clear as glass. "Wait till she sees it. She'll either cry or combust." My mother's chuckle followed. "It's just cheeky. She'll survive." I froze. I wanted to confront them, to scream, "What did you do?" But instead, I did what I'd always done. I swallowed it, smiled when the planner asked if I wanted to see the cake table again, said no, returned to the mirror and touched up my blush. Survival mode, my oldest skill. Hours later, the ceremony wrapped, toasts were made, everyone clapped a little too loudly. I watched Delphine scroll on her phone through most of it. She raised her glass during Jonas's speech but didn't say a word during mine. And then, as the reception moved into the courtyard, came the moment I'll never forget. It was Delphine, of course, who handed the gift to the MC. A neatly wrapped box with cream paper and gold trim. The card read, "From Mom and Delphine." Cute! The MC made a joke, something about sentimental sisters, and invited me to unwrap it in front of everyone. I didn't want to. Every cell in my body said don't, but too many eyes were on me. I smiled, peeled back the paper, and opened the box. It was a wooden frame, thick, heavy, the kind people hang in hallways or above mantels, and engraved across the top in polished brass letters, "To our biggest disappointment, finally settling." I stared. The words didn't compute at first. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misread it. A prank, something from another table. But no. Delphine was filming me. Her phone tilted at an angle she'd practiced. "It's just a joke," she called out, her voice bright like confetti. A few guests laughed, nervously. Jonas stood still, shoulders tight, eyes locked on the frame. My father looked at his plate. My mother smiled like it was some edgy Hallmark moment. I didn't say a word. I placed the frame gently on the dessert table, right beside the lemon tarts my mother insisted we include because they're classic. Then I turned back to the crowd and said, "Thank you. That's it. No scene, no tears, just a thank you with a smile so calm it made Delphine lower her phone. But inside me, something flipped. I wasn't hurt. I was done. People like them don't use knives. They use moments, public ones they can later rewrite as jokes. They laugh while you bleed and then ask why you're being dramatic. They didn't know I'd heard them earlier. They didn't expect me to stand tall, let alone smile. But what they really didn't expect was that this wedding wasn't the beginning of us. It was the beginning of me, without them. I looked around at the guests. The lights shimmered. The music played. The air smelled of roses and champagne. But something new had entered my lungs. Something clean. It was the scent of truth. I whispered to myself just under my breath, "You don't get to do this again." They thought this was a cute way to remind me where I stood. What they didn't realize was, it marked the last time I'd stand quietly. By the time Jonas and I reached the hotel, the silence had taken on a different weight. It wasn't the quiet you get after a party winds down. It was heavier, like something had been stripped clean and left bare, the kind of stillness that doesn't comfort but confirms. He fell asleep fast, suit jacket still tossed over the chair, shoes kicked half under the bed. I let him rest. He'd done his part. He was the calm to my chaos tonight, and I knew this wasn't his battle. Not yet. I sat by the window in a white robe that didn't feel like mine. The Savannah skyline blinked faintly outside. The lights of wedding guests' Ubers still scattered across the long driveway below. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Not my face, just the outline of someone trying too hard not to feel. But feelings don't ask permission, do they? I opened my notes app, typed slowly, list things they don't see, then paused, not sure what to write first. Then came the words. They don't see how much it cost me to love them anyway. And just like that, my mind dragged me backward. 1 year earlier. It was mid-October. Atlanta was cooling down, and I had just wrapped a funding pitch for a beach retreat brand I'd been working on for almost 8 months. Everything was finally aligning. My vision, my capital, my projections. I remember sitting at my dining table, sipping lukewarm coffee and adjusting the last deck slide when the phone rang. It was my mother. She never called during the day. Her voice cracked before I even said hello. She talked about overdue property taxes, refinancing gone sideways, and how they might lose the lake place if something didn't change. I could hear her pacing. Her breath was shallow. She said she didn't want to ask, but she had no one else. And I didn't hesitate. Of course I didn't. I told her I'd transfer 40 grand that afternoon. She gasped, "Oh, baby, you don't have to." But we both knew she expected I would. That was the role I played. I also sent her the PDF proposal, titled Coastal Reset. It was clean, light, filled with natural tones and glass accents, a space designed for creative restoration. I had poured myself into it. "Maybe if y'all end up keeping the house," I wrote in the email, "this could be the vibe to help rejuvenate it." She never replied to that part. 6 months later, I was scrolling through Instagram during a client flight delay when a photo stopped me cold. There it was. Delphine in a linen jumpsuit, standing in front of a freshly renovated beach house. Caption, "My healing home reveal. Every element was mine." The wicker pendant lights, the sage green backsplash tile, the oversized canvas art from a local artist I'd featured in my deck. And the kicker? Tagline across the top of the reel. "A space to finally be free." I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just stared at the screen as the comments flooded in. "OMG, this is a dream. You're such a visionary, Delphine. How do you come up with this stuff?" I checked my email history, opened that message to Mom. The timestamp, 9:32 a.m. The forward to Delphine, 9:54 a.m., 22 minutes. That's all it took for my trust to become her blueprint. I locked my phone, took 3 slow breaths, told myself I must be overthinking. Surely they didn't mean it like that. That lie lasted exactly 1 week. Irina, my cousin on my dad's side, the one who never showed up to drama but always saw everything, texted me a screenshot late one evening. It was from the family group chat I wasn't included in. "Delphine, Mom really came through with that layout. Judelle, that beach house is such a vibe. Total upgrade. Cairo, LOL, manifesting with other people's brains." Message liked by both Delphine and Mom. I didn't reply. Not to Irina, not to anyone. I just saved the image to a folder I titled, clarity. Then I whispered to no one, "That's the cost of my silence." Jonas stirred in the bed behind me. I looked back at him, peaceful and untouched by all this. I wondered what he'd say if he knew, if he'd look at me differently, if he'd ask why I never said anything. I already knew the answer, because I kept hoping they'd stop, if I just kept being useful. But tonight, under the soft hum of the hotel mini fridge, something shifted. They didn't just steal a design, they rewrote me. And for the first time, I started writing back. By the second morning after the wedding, something in me had clicked into place. Not healed, not settled, just focused. I woke early, not because I slept well, I didn't, but because my mind wouldn't shut off. Jonas was still dozing, one arm draped across my side of the bed, like he was holding the night in place. I slipped out quietly, showered, and walked down to the hotel cafe without waking him. The lobby was still half asleep. A few business travelers hunched over their laptops, earbuds in, eyes glazed. I grabbed a chamomile tea and settled near the window with mine. I was answering vendor emails, scrolling through RSVPs that came in too late, when a small alert pinged at the top of my screen. Security notification. Unauthorized access attempt blocked file. Mentorship budget 2022.xlx. Location, Savannah, Georgia. Device, MacBook Pro. I didn't move for a full 5 seconds. That file wasn't public. It wasn't something I'd ever shared on social media or posted. I had only ever sent it to one person, my mother. The blood in my arms went cool, not cold. Just measured, like my body knew exactly what this was before my brain caught up. I pulled out my phone and texted Noah. Me. Are you up? I just got a security flag on the mentorship folder. Noah. Yep, on it. I didn't need to explain. She knew which file I meant. She also knew the importance of it. That spreadsheet contained projected distribution plans for the mentorship fund I'd quietly been developing for over a year. Targeted support for women in tech with no family support systems. Confidential donor info. Expansion roadmaps. Financial commitments. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Noah calling. Yeah? I said, already knowing it wasn't good. It came from a device labeled Avis MacBook Pro, she said. Same IP that pinged you before on that other shared folder 2 months ago. I closed my eyes. But it wasn't her login, was it? Nope, it was Lowell's. He didn't guess the password. He used a direct link, one that had already been authenticated. So she forwarded it to him, I murmured. There was a pause. Then Noah said what we both knew. This wasn't a breach, this was a handoff. I exhaled through my nose, slow and tight. Log everything. Already did. Want me to restrict future logins from all known Harper devices? Yes, lock it down, full restriction. I'll escalate from here. We ended the call, but the silence after felt like a vacuum, pulling every old memory into its center. I opened my sent mail, found the original email. It was dated 6 months ago. Subject line, thought you'd be proud of this. I had written, Hi Mom, just wanted to share what I've been working on. You always said I should do something that helps people. This mentorship fund is what I've built. Hope you're proud. Attached were the documents, the notes, and the private folder link. There was never a reply, not even a got it. And now, somehow, my younger brother Lowell, who once failed sophomore year for plagiarizing someone else's essay, had tried to open that exact file. I stared at the email thread for a long while. Then I opened a new folder on my desktop. Family, use, and tracking inside it, I created subfolders, forward logs, access records, legal prep, voice notes. I copied Noah's report into the appropriate folder. I added the original email, took a screenshot of the alert, labeled it all meticulously, time, date, source, device. I wasn't angry, not in the way they'd expect. I wasn't throwing my phone or sobbing into a pillow. I was charting, documenting, preserving. If they saw me as a vault to extract from, I'd become a vault that tracks the extraction. They always used my silence as proof of agreement. But silence isn't agreement. It's often just delay. Jonas texted me as I was labeling the last file. Still sleeping, you okay? Want coffee upstairs? I replied, Give me 20. I'm finishing something. He didn't ask what. I loved that about him. He respected boundaries that my own family never even noticed existed. I sat back, letting the last of the tea go cold. It was never about just the money. It was the assumption behind it, the entitlement to anything I created, the quiet belief that because I was capable, I must also be available, and because I was calm, I must be complicit. I looked out the window, the morning light bleeding through the gauzy curtains. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I wasn't going to be a folder someone could just open anymore. 3 days after the wedding, I found myself seated at Delphine's patio table under a cream umbrella with tassels that matched the napkins. The air smelled like sugared citrus and curated effort. She was hosting brunch for what she called the inner circle, a mix of influencers, local creatives, and whoever she wanted to impress this week. Jonas came with me, though I could tell he hated every second of it. I didn't blame him. The brunch wasn't about food or connection. It was a theater, and I was the unwilling centerpiece. Peach mimosas sparkled in vintage coupes, soft jazz drifted from a Bluetooth speaker, and everyone looked like they were waiting for something to happen. Delphine wore a flowing ivory jumpsuit, again suspiciously bridal. She moved around the table like a host on a lifestyle network. When she finally made it to my side, she handed me a gift, wrapped perfectly, down to the satin ribbon. "This is just a little something," she said, her voice sing-song and loud enough for others to hear. "Thought it might help with all that pressure you've been under." My stomach dipped. I untied the ribbon carefully. Inside was a hardcover book, pristine. Emotional Regulation for Difficult Women. I blinked once, then twice. A few people chuckled. One woman said, "That's actually a great read. I saw it on Reese's list." Someone else murmured, "Bold choice," and bit into a croissant like it was none of their business, because to them, it wasn't. Delphine just smiled. Even Mom let out a light laugh. "She's always been spirited. Maybe it'll give her some tools." I gripped the edges of the book like it might explode, and then I smiled, the kind of smile that's quiet and tight, the kind people mistake for graciousness. But Jonas knew. He reached under the table and touched my knee once, firmly. "Thanks," I said. My voice didn't shake. How thoughtful. The table moved on. The attention drifted, but I stayed seated inside that moment like it was a glass room. I used to believe composure was strength. I thought if I didn't flinch, I won. But that day I realized something else. Composure is just silence that learned how to dress. I carried that book home like it weighed nothing, but it stayed in my lap the entire drive. That evening, while Jonas took a call on the balcony, I opened Instagram. I don't know why, maybe instinct, maybe bad timing, but right at the top of my stories queue was Irina. She'd sent a message with just one line. "This is probably nothing, but you should see this." It was a screenshot of Delphine's private story, posted months ago. A black background with white text that read, "Ever tried helping someone mid-nervous breakdown over a Canva deck? Fun times." Followed by a crying laughing emoji. Below it, a few comments. "Girl, why do you always attract drama? You always get dragged into chaos, lol." The post had been liked by 2 mutual friends, one of whom had messaged me the week prior saying, "Your strength is inspiring. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't text Irina back. I just saved the screenshot and moved it into the same folder from earlier. Family use legal tracking. Subfolder, character evidence." Later that night, on our drive to a small rooftop dinner Jonas had arranged with some friends, I sat in silence. Not the kind that waits to be broken, but the kind that builds something inside. Jonas glanced over, one hand on the wheel, his voice soft. "You've been quiet since brunch." I nodded, then said, "Next time they try something like that, I won't hold back, not even a little." He was quiet for a second. "Are you sure?" I turned my head toward the windshield, eyes locked on the horizon. They've had enough chances. And just like that, something irreversible happened. Not dramatic, not loud, just a final switch. I didn't need their understanding anymore. I needed them to understand I was done asking. The morning sun didn't feel warm when I stepped onto the back patio of my parents' house. It was bright, yes, picturesque even. Everything about the setup screamed, "See? We're just a happy family." Florals spilled from vintage pitchers on every table. Ceramic plates were arranged with magazine-level symmetry. There was fresh squeezed juice in delicate carafes, and enough mason jars with pastel-striped straws to make a lifestyle blogger weep. Delphine was already seated, legs crossed, sunglasses too large for her face. She waved when she saw me. "You came! I thought you might still be mad." Her tone was light, teasing, like we were joking about a spilled drink, not a public humiliation. Lowell laughed. "Come on, it was just a gift. People need to chill." Jonas stood stiff beside me. He hadn't said much that morning. I think he was giving me space, or maybe waiting to see if I'd change my mind about coming. But I didn't. I needed to see if any of them would pretend this brunch didn't carry a crater beneath the table. Turns out they all could. We sat. Avis poured coffee into a pale blue cup that matched her blouse. Elwood, my father, reached for the fruit platter like he didn't have a single thought about what had gone down 4 days earlier. Small talk floated like pollen. "Delphine, how's the podcast launch?" "Oh, we hit 1,000 downloads already. People love the authenticity vibe." Lowell chimed in. "I've been digging into this new crypto. Total game changer." Avis smiled like she was soaking it all in, proud of her offspring's little empires. Not one word about the wedding, not the toast, not the frame, not even the fact that they gave a gift engraved with my shame. I glanced at Jonas. He was trying, he really was, to keep his mouth shut. But I saw it in the tight line of his jaw, the subtle tapping of his finger on the napkin. He cleared his throat. "I just want to say something, real quick." The table paused. "What happened at the wedding," Jonas said evenly, "wasn't okay." No one looked at him. No one looked at me either. Elwood reached for a bowl of cobbler. "Who wants more dessert, still warm?" Delphine laughed. "Dad's priorities." Lowell smirked. Avis added cream to her coffee. And the moment passed, like nothing had been said at all. Jonas set down his fork with an audible clink. He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. The message had been received and discarded. That was when I stood. The chair scraped against the patio bricks. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My words cut sharper when they were still. "You don't get to humiliate me and then pretend it didn't happen." Nobody moved. I looked at Delphine. "You made a joke, right? A funny little jab? Then why hide your story from me afterward?" She blinked, but said nothing. I turned to Avis. "You laughed. You always laugh. And then you act like it's all love. That's not love, that's performance." Still no one spoke. Their silence was choreography now, refined and repeated. I scanned each face at the table, then landed on my father. "And you?" I asked. "You've been silent so long I forgot what your voice sounds like when it isn't repeating a menu item." Elwood looked up. "This is not the place." "That's the problem," I said. "It never is. That's how we keep getting here." I picked up the empty mimosa glass in front of me and placed it down, gently. This fake harmony? It's just more control. You want to bury the fire before anyone smells the smoke." Jonas rose beside me, not touching, just standing in alignment. I looked at each of them again. "You've mistaken my silence for weakness. But here's the truth. Silence is your currency, not mine, and I'm broke." Delphine opened her mouth, probably to say something dismissive, something rehearsed, but I held up a finger. "Next time, it won't be private." And then I walked out of the garden, not waiting for permission or apologies. Jonas followed a beat later. Behind me, I heard Elwood say, "Let her go. She'll cool off." They always said that. They never noticed I wasn't boiling anymore. I was done. The next evening, I was in my hotel room, the sky outside bruised with the last strokes of dusk. I'd kicked off my shoes, pulled my laptop onto my thighs, and was halfway through organizing the folder labeled Family Use Legal Tracking when my phone buzzed. A message from Kayla, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. "Hey, is this about you?" No context, just a link. The thumbnail alone made my chest tighten. A podcast banner in soft beige tones with 2 hosts smiling like therapists who drank green juice for breakfast. The title? When Love Isn't Enough, Navigating Family with Narcissists. I clicked. There she was, Delphine, my sister, her voice all warmth and humility. You know, not every story has a clear villain. Sometimes people are just damaged, and they drag others into their chaos. The host murmured something about boundaries and empathy. Delphine continued, softer now. Some people make themselves so hard to love, and then call it loneliness. They don't realize the bridge burnt behind them wasn't sabotage. It was self-preservation. I sat completely still. She never said my name. She didn't have to. Anyone who knew us would know exactly who she meant. The recent wedding, the brunch, the quirky frame. It was all fresh in everyone's mind. I closed the podcast app, heart pounding, not with sadness, but with an icy sort of rage. By the time I opened Instagram, I already knew what I'd find. A carousel post from Delphine. The first photo, us as kids, sitting by a lake. The second, her crying into a tissue, perfectly lit. The third, a sunset over the beach house. Caption: family wounds are the hardest. I tried to love her, even when she made it unbearable. Healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. The comments were already piling up. Wow, so raw. You're brave for speaking your truth. She sounds toxic AF. You deserve peace, girl. It was like watching my own reflection get erased in real time. And the worst part? They believed her. The curated sadness, the soft voice, the carefully chosen phrases like emotionally volatile and trying so hard. All of it woven into a story that made her the survivor and me the storm. I wasn't angry because she lied. I was angry because she lied so well. I minimized the window and reached for my laptop. The folder was still open, its title now feeling more prophetic than practical. Family use, legal tracking. I clicked into it, breathing slow. My fingers moved without hesitation. I opened the PDF with my financial contributions, the forwarded emails, the deck she'd used for the beach house, the spreadsheet Lowell accessed, attached each to a single email. Addressed it to a woman I knew from a tech equity panel last year, someone who'd once told me, when you're ready to tell your story, tell it to someone who won't flinch. Subject: when the villain speaks first. Body: I'm done protecting the narrative. Here's mine. I clicked send. Then I leaned back and waited. An hour later, I posted one tweet. No hashtags, no threads, no drama, just, silence doesn't mean guilt, it means exhaustion, receipts incoming. Within minutes, my notifications exploded. Retweets, DMs, mentions from people I didn't even know followed me. Jonas walked in from grabbing dinner, setting down a takeout bag from the Thai place down the street. He stopped mid-step when he saw my face. You okay? I tilted the laptop toward him so he could see the tweet. He blinked. Did you just go live? I nodded. No more whispers. Let them hear me roar. He didn't say anything else, just came around the couch and sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. That was his way of saying he was with me. No speech, no strategy, just presence. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Marina. Delphine's freaking out. Just saw your tweet. She's trying to get ahead of it. I almost smiled. For once, she wasn't 5 steps ahead. She was behind, panicked, reacting, and I wasn't afraid of her anymore. The Harper Foundation gala glittered like a snow globe shaken just for show. Glass walls, golden centerpieces, a string quartet playing jazz renditions of pop hits. I walked in with Jonas beside me, our steps aligned, our hands loose but close. Delphine was already at the mic. She wore a satin navy gown and her favorite expression, remorseful hero. Her voice, velvet-wrapped, floated through the crowd. Healing, she said, starts with telling the truth, even when it's hard, even when it paints you in an unflattering light. The audience clapped, polite, detached. I scanned the room, women in heels balancing tiny hors d'oeuvres, men sipping bourbon and glancing at their phones. My tweet was still trending. Screens lit up around us like fireflies. They'd seen it. They knew. And she knew I was here. Jonas leaned in. Ready? I nodded. Let's find our seats. This should be interesting. We passed a cluster of community leaders and sponsors. Some nodded, others avoided eye contact. Delphine caught sight of us and smiled like nothing had happened, that same damn smile she wore when she gave me the frame. The host announced, up next, we're honored to welcome Marcy Harper to speak on women's leadership and resilience. As I stepped forward, my mother leaned toward me. Keep it classy, she whispered. You've said enough already. I turned slightly. Have I? The mic felt colder than I expected. I wrapped my fingers around it, grounding myself. Thank you, I began, scanning the room. Tonight's about women who lead, and what they overcome to do it. I paused. I used to believe silence was strength, that enduring pain without protest was noble, but I've learned silence is also how harm survives. A murmur swept through the crowd. Phones lifted. Some started recording. I won't waste your time with vague empowerment phrases. I'm going to be direct. I looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some judgmental, some hopeful. 2 weeks ago, I was publicly mocked at my own wedding. A gift, engraved with biggest disappointment, was presented to me by my family. Delphine's face froze. I've been called difficult, emotional, dramatic. These are the tools people use to discredit women who won't stay quiet. Someone in the back gasped audibly. My sister recorded a podcast about a narcissistic sibling. She never said my name but didn't have to. Then posted a carousel of curated sympathy, painting herself as the victim. Delphine took a step forward. Marcy. Jonas stood. His voice was calm, firm. Let her speak. You've had your turn. The room went silent. My mother motioned to the host, whispering something behind her hand. I didn't care. I've got receipts, I continued. Financial records showing misuse of funds I gave in good faith. Screenshots of my private files accessed without permission. Comments made about my mental health. Mocked, shared, laughed at. I inhaled, let it settle. And I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because women like me, like some of you, are told to keep it quiet, to preserve the family name, to smile through sabotage. I looked at my mother, then my sister. Neither blinked. Well, I said, I don't do quiet anymore. The room held its breath. Family doesn't mean immunity, not anymore. I handed the mic back to the host and walked off stage. Jonas met me halfway, hand outstretched. Not to pull me, just to meet me. The applause started as a whisper, then grew louder. Some clapped out of shock. Others, because they knew. Delphine turned and walked out, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on marble. Avis sat stone still. Elwood adjusted his cufflinks. The show was over, but I wasn't acting anymore. They always expected me to break. I did, just not the way they hoped. 3 days after the gala, I sat at my kitchen island in Atlanta, barefoot, hair tied back, sipping from a chipped mug that still read Best Daughter. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it was the biggest cup I had, and this morning, I needed more caffeine than sentiment. My inbox was flooded, subject lines blinking like tiny sirens. Brand terminates partnership with Delphine Harper. Podcast host releases statement, ethical concerns, influencer backlash, family isn't a PR campaign. No phone call, no apology, just digital vanishing acts. Delphine had gone quiet. Posts archived, comments off, stories deleted. Avis hadn't been tagged in any family photo roundups this week. Even distant cousins started unfollowing. They didn't apologize. They disconnected. Which, honestly, was the most honest thing they'd done in years. Jonas walked in from the bedroom holding his tablet. He looked well-rested. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 2 days. He set the tablet down. Noah sent the full log file. Everything's timestamped and clean. I turned the screen toward me. There it was, the IP trail, the access attempts, the forwarded links, the name Lowell Harper attached to the login. Same device ID as Avis's MacBook. The same link I sent her 10 months ago. I had built something good. My own company, my mentorship deck, my design plans, and they'd pass them around like party favors. Jonas clicked into a folder labeled Legal, where Noah had uploaded her report. You ready to file? I didn't flinch. Yes. We submitted the digital privacy breach with the appropriate agency. It was surgical, quiet, but not invisible. No threats, no grandstanding, just facts. That night, I opened my shared drive and started purging. First, I revoked access for Avis, Lowell, and even the old email Delphine had once begged me to just include, in case she ever wanted to support my work. I removed them from archived projects, financial access points, and advisory boards. They wouldn't be borrowing my light again. Not to warm themselves or to shine on their narratives, I deleted the old Harper family share drive and replaced it with a clean version labeled Forward Only. Then I pulled up my company's leadership page and edited my bio. Removed any reference to daughter of local philanthropists. That title had expired. Late into the night, while Jonas read beside me, I drafted a post. Not a takedown, a boundary. I titled it, "This isn't about revenge, it's about recovery." I uploaded redacted screenshots, blurred names, intact timelines. I wrote, "Sometimes what looks like silence is really just survival. I didn't go public to punish anyone. I spoke up because protecting your dignity should never feel like betrayal." I attached the screenshot of Delphine's mocking, nervous breakdown post and added, "This is what erasure looks like, dressed in likes and filters." I posted it to Medium and linked it on my professional page. Then I shut my laptop. The post went viral overnight. Not celebrity viral, real viral. People, women especially, messaged me. "Thank you for this." I thought I was the only one whose family weaponized silence. This helped me walk away. It didn't feel like vindication. It felt like oxygen. The next morning, I walked into my studio and lit a candle by the window. Not a ritual, a reminder. I hadn't burned the house down. I just stopped letting it trap me. It had been 2 quiet weeks since the gala. Not silent, just still. The kind of stillness that settles in after everything breaks loose. Like the hush after a thunderstorm, when the sky stops cracking open and just hangs, gray but calm. The leaves barely move. The puddles mirror a sky that seems unsure of how to begin again. That morning, I woke up to the soft patter of spring rain on my windows in Atlanta. Light, rhythmic, cleansing. The kind of rain that doesn't demand attention, but invites reflection. I didn't mind it. I brewed my coffee slowly, letting the ritual pull me into the present. No rush, no urgency. Just me, the soft sound of the rain, and the hum of a city that hadn't yet opened its eyes. I settled at my desk, pulled my robe tighter around me, opened my laptop, and began scrolling through emails. Most were the usual clutter: newsletters, invoices, a few messages from mentees. And then I saw her name. Subject line, still family. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, heart suddenly tight in my chest. The cursor hovered, waiting on me. The steam from my mug curled upward, wrapping itself around the silence like it wanted to hold the moment with me. I sat like that for a while. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20 minutes. Long enough for the coffee to cool slightly. Eventually I clicked. "I've always loved you, even when you couldn't see it. You misunderstood. You're still my sister. We're still family." That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, I shouldn't have said that. No real ownership. Just a revisionist attempt at closure, crafted to look like compassion. A passive reach, positioned like grace, but laced with implication. Like she was the one forgiving, while I was the one refusing to be forgiven. It read like someone trying to end a chapter without admitting they burned the pages. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it to Jonas, even though I knew he'd want to see it. Didn't screenshot it. Didn't rage text anyone. Didn't even delete it. I just marked it unread, then archived it. That was my response. My version of a boundary. Quiet, final, intentional. Outside, the rain didn't let up. I stayed in, lit the candle I'd started lighting every morning after the gala. A new habit, or maybe a ritual. Not to remember, but to recenter. Not nostalgia, just a small flame that helped me feel grounded. I logged into the back end of the mentorship platform I'd built. The one they once laughed at, diminished in those sharp, fake smile ways. The one they told me was too niche, too idealistic. Now it was growing, not viral, not explosive, but steady, real. There were new donations, small ones, $10 here, $25 there. Alongside them, short messages that landed louder than any check. Keep going. Wish I had this in my 20s. You're building something real. I stared at the screen for a while, then clicked into the Programs tab. I created a new initiative, Rebuild, for women recovering from family emotional manipulation. No press release, no Instagram post with a quote card, no announcement, just a simple description and an open door. Around lunchtime, I stretched out on the couch, phone face down on the coffee table. No sound, no notifications. I hadn't opened Instagram in days, didn't care what Delphine had posted or deleted. Whether Avis was still trying to position herself as the center of everyone's brunch plans. Let them talk. Let them defend whatever fiction they'd spun. I was out of the game. Then my phone buzzed, just once. A message. No subject line, just a single sentence. Because of your story, I packed a bag and left my mother's house last night. Thank you for reminding me I'm not crazy. I exhaled. Not the kind of exhale that's dramatic or performative. The kind that sneaks out of you without a sound, but lifts weight you didn't know you were still carrying. I leaned my head back. Tears didn't fall, but they brimmed. Not from sadness, from something cleaner, something closer to recognition. That kind of moment where you remember why you started. Impact doesn't always show up in headlines or follower counts. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet bravery of one woman finding a door she thought was locked, only to realize it had always been open, just never visible. The next morning, the rain had stopped. I got dressed in a hoodie, pulled my hair into a knot, and walked to the cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. No makeup, no earbuds. Just me, in my body, feeling present for once. The barista greeted me by name. I smiled, genuinely. Said good morning without rushing. I didn't check Twitter. Didn't open my analytics dashboard. I ordered my usual, grabbed a seat by the window, and pulled out my journal. I wrote, "You don't need an apology to heal. You need truth. You need boundaries. And the courage to walk away, even when they call it betrayal. Especially then." I closed the journal and slid it back into my bag. Outside, the sidewalk still shimmered with yesterday's rain, but the clouds had started to lift. The light was different. Not bright, but clearing. A beginning, maybe. They might still tell their version of me, but I'm not listening anymore. Some stories don't end with apologies. Some don't come full circle. But healing isn't about closure. It's about clarity. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt like your family sees you as the problem for simply having boundaries, if you've been told you're too sensitive, too much, or just hard to love because you refuse to keep playing a role that hurt you, I want you to know this. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for walking away to protect your peace. I used to think love meant tolerance, that forgiveness required forgetting, but peace, I've learned, doesn't beg for proof. It doesn't need everyone to understand. It just needs you to understand your worth. You don't have to burn bridges, but you're allowed to stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. And maybe your story isn't this one. Maybe your wound looks different, but if it still aches, you're still healing, and healing is still happening. So here's my question to you. What would you say to the younger version of yourself, still trying to please people who never tried to understand her? Leave a comment and tell me. Or just drop a if this resonated. Type 1 if you've been there, or let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this story touched something in you, please consider subscribing. We share real stories for real people with real heart. And if this helped you even a little, I hope you'll be here for the next one. Until then, be safe, be loud, and most importantly, be free.
The soft hum of the air conditioner in my office contrasted sharply with the storm of thoughts in my head. I'm Julie, a 32-year-old lawyer. My life now is very different from my chaotic childhood, a past I keep hidden from everyone. The calm of my office was broken by the ringing phone. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something about it felt eerily familiar. I answered cautiously, "Julie speaking." "Julie, it's your father," came a nervous voice that did nothing to ease my rising anxiety. A chill ran through me. I hadn't heard that voice in over a decade. It once meant safety and love, but now symbolized betrayal and pain. "Why are you calling me?" I asked sharply, cutting through the silence after his introduction. "I'm in trouble, Julie. Financial trouble. I need your help," he said, his voice cracking. His plea, however sincere, ignited a fire of resentment in me. "My help? Now you need me after all these years?" I retorted, disbelief and anger mingling in my tone. "Yes, I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. I'm really in a bind," he continued, desperation creeping into his voice. You stopped being my father a long time ago. You can't just call me now and expect me to help, I responded, my voice cold and firm. There was a heavy pause. Julie, please. I'm still your dad, he said weakly, trying to revive a long-dead bond. The word dad felt foreign. You gave up that title when you chose her over me, I said, years of suppressed anger and hurt coming out. You're my daughter. You thought wrong, I interrupted, cutting him off. You made your choice years ago, and now I've made mine. His voice was a mix of pleading and despair. Julie, I am sorry. I just need this one favor. The word sorry echoed in my office, empty and meaningless. Sorry doesn't change the past. I can't help you, I said firmly and hung up. Before I was 9, my childhood was full of love and laughter, a testament to the wonderful life my parents and I shared in our small rented house. My mother, a beacon of joy and kindness, filled our days with warmth and our nights with stories and dreams. My father, once playful and caring, spent evenings playing games with me or teaching me about the world. Our home was a cocoon of happiness, where every day was an adventure and every night a sweet dream. But our blissful life came to an abrupt halt with my mother's untimely death. The house that once echoed with laughter and love turned into a silent memory. I remember walking through the rooms, each corner a stark reminder of her absence. The loss was unbearable for both me and my father, who had lost the love of his life. However, his grief seemed to diminish quickly, much to my confusion and dismay. Within a few months, he brought home Diane, a woman who was to take a significant role in our lives. I recall the day he introduced her, a day that marked the end of my cherished childhood. Julie, this is Diane. She's going to be staying with us, my father announced one evening, his voice devoid of the warmth I was used to. I looked up at her, searching for a hint of motherly warmth or friendliness, but found none. Her presence was imposing, her gaze cold and calculating. From the very first moment, I sensed a change in the air, a shift that filled me with an unexplainable sense of dread. "Hello, Julie," Diane said, her voice smooth yet devoid of genuine emotion. Her smile, rather than comforting, seemed to hide something sinister beneath its surface. In the days that followed, the house felt different, as if the walls themselves were recoiling from her presence. The cheerful memories of the past seemed to fade, replaced by a lingering unease that settled in every corner. I remember looking at Diane, trying to find something redeeming or kind about her, but her every look, every gesture seemed to be laced with an unspoken animosity. It was clear that she wasn't here to fill the void my mother had left, but to weave a new narrative, one in which I was an unwelcome part. As I watched her move around our home, a home that once felt safe and happy, I realized that life would never be the same again. I couldn't help but feel that her arrival was the start of something bad. The way she looked at me with eyes that seemed to hide more than they showed did not feel good for the future. The days after Diane arrived felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The house, once filled with my mother's laughter and love, now felt cold and unwelcoming. Diane's presence cast a shadow over everything, making even simple daily routines hard. One morning, as I sat down for breakfast, my food tasted unusually salty. "Diane, did you put too much salt in this?" I asked hesitantly. "Oh, did I? It must have been a mistake. Just eat it, Julie. Don't be so picky," she replied, her tone dismissive and almost mocking. The incidents grew more frequent and spiteful. I remember finding my clothes ruined after doing laundry. "Diane, my clothes are all faded. What happened?" I asked one day, holding up my once favorite dress, now discolored and unwearable. She glanced at it and shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe the washing machine is acting up, or perhaps it's time you stop wearing such childish clothes." I felt a surge of frustration, but knew arguing would only make things worse. Feeling helpless, I turned to my father, hoping he would see through her facade. "Dad, Diane is ruining my things. She's always mean to me," I said one evening, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. My father's reaction was far from what I had hoped for. "Julie, you're imagining things. Diane is doing her best to fit into our family. Stop causing trouble," he said sternly, his words cutting deep. "But Dad, it's the truth," I protested, but he wouldn't listen. "That's enough, Julie. I don't want to hear any more of your accusations," he replied, his voice rising in anger. Each day was a battle, trying to navigate around Diane's hostility and my father's indifference. The home that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. I started spending more time in my room, trying to escape the constant tension that hung in the air. Living in that house, I felt alone and misunderstood. The safety and happiness that once filled those walls were replaced by fear and anxiety. Every day I longed for the past, for the times when my mother's smile was enough to light up the entire room, a stark contrast to the darkness that now lingered in every corner. Living with Diane became a daily ordeal of evasion and endurance. Her hostility towards me escalated from verbal jabs to physical abuse. It started subtly, a pinch on my arm or a twist on my stomach, always in places easily concealed under my clothes. The pain was sharp, a cruel reminder of my helplessness in her presence. I developed ways to avoid her, always alert to where she was in the house. I took long routes to my room or waited until she was busy before moving around. Despite my efforts, she sometimes caught me off guard, and those moments always ended in pain. One day, while I was quietly reading in the living room, Diane walked in and, for no reason, pinched my arm hard, her nails digging into my skin. I winced in pain, but held back any cry. She looked at me with a cold, triumphant smirk before walking away. During one of Grandma's rare visits, she noticed how cautiously I moved and how I flinched when Diane's voice echoed through the house. "Julie, is everything all right at home?" Grandma asked, her voice full of concern. I looked at her, my heart itching to tell the truth, but fear and the desire to protect her from worry held me back. "Yes, Grandma, everything's fine. Just a lot of schoolwork," I lied, forcing a smile. She seemed unsure, but didn't press further. I felt a twinge of guilt for deceiving her, but I couldn't bear the thought of causing her any distress. That evening, as Grandma left, I saw Diane watching from the window, her expression satisfied. It was as if she enjoyed knowing she had control over me, that she could hurt me and get away with it. Her triumphant look was a clear message that she was in power, and I was just a helpless player in her twisted game. I retreated to my room, feeling trapped in a cycle of abuse and silence. The physical pain from Diane's pinches and twists was bearable compared to the emotional turmoil I felt. School was my sanctuary, a place where I could briefly escape the misery of home. But even there, the shadows of my struggles at home began to show. My teacher, Mrs. Jeremy, a kind-hearted woman who always encouraged her students, started to notice changes in me. One day, as I handed in my homework, she gently grabbed my wrist, her eyes drawn to the bruises on my arm. "Julie, what happened here?" "These look like bruises," she said, her voice full of concern. I quickly pulled my arm back, covering the bruises with my sleeve. "It's nothing, Mrs. Jeremy. I just fell while playing," I lied, avoiding her gaze. Mrs. Jeremy didn't look convinced. "Julie, if something is wrong or if someone is hurting you, you can tell me. It's important to speak out," she urged, her eyes searching mine for the truth. I wanted to tell her everything about Diane and how scared I was, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I forced a smile. "Really, Mrs. Jeremy, I'm fine. It was just a silly accident." She gave me a long, thoughtful look, then nodded slowly. "All right, Julie, but remember my door is always open. You're not alone," she said with a reassuring smile. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Her kindness made it even harder to keep up the facade that everything was okay. As I walked home that day, Mrs. Jeremy's words echoed in my mind. I felt grateful for her concern and deeply lonely from carrying my burdens alone. The thought of revealing the truth about my home life was terrifying. I feared what Diane might do if she found out I had told someone. That night at dinner, I was quiet, lost in thought about Mrs. Jeremy's offer to help. Diane noticed my silence. "Why so quiet tonight, Julie? Cat got your tongue?" she asked in a mocking tone. I just shook my head and continued eating, trying to make myself as small and unnoticeable as possible. After dinner, as I lay in bed, the reality of my situation felt more overwhelming than ever. Mrs. Jeremy's concern showed me that people did care, yet the fear of what revealing the truth might bring kept me silent. I was caught between wanting to tell someone and fearing Diane's retaliation, a balance I navigated every day. The day Mrs. Jeremy decided to involve my father was filled with anxiety and dread for me. I sat in the principal's office, fidgeting nervously, my mind racing with fear about how my father would react. When he finally arrived, his face was stern, his eyes showing a mix of irritation and embarrassment. "What's this about, Julie? Why am I being called to your school like this?" he demanded, his voice sharp as he walked in. I glanced at Mrs. Jeremy, seeking support. Swallowing hard, I tried to find my voice. "Dad," Mrs. Jeremy saw the bruises, I stammered, feeling his gaze on me. Before I could explain further, he interrupted, his anger palpable. "Bruises? What are you talking about? Are you making up stories again?" he snapped. Mrs. Jeremy stepped in, her tone firm yet calm. "Mr. Smith, I'm concerned about Julie's well-being. The bruises on her arm don't seem accidental. We need to address this." My father's face darkened with anger. "She's perfectly safe at home. Julie, are you spreading lies about our family?" He turned towards me, his disappointment clear. I'd been holding back, but now the words started to spill out. "It's not lies, Dad. Diane, she's been hurting me," I managed to say, finally telling the truth. His reaction was total disbelief. "Diane? That's ridiculous. She's been nothing but kind to you. I won't have you accusing her of this." "But Dad, it's the truth," I cried out, desperate for him to believe me. He stood up abruptly, losing his patience. "Enough of this. Tell Mrs. Jeremy you made it all up." I turned to Mrs. Jeremy and repeated his words. She nodded but didn't say anything. When we got home, he locked me in my room without another word. Through the door, I could hear Diane's voice, dripping with false concern. "I told you, she's just seeking attention," she said. I sat on my bed, feeling utterly alone and despairing. The one person I thought I could count on had turned his back on me. My room, which had once been my haven, now felt like a prison. The pain of the physical abuse was nothing compared to the emotional torment of being disbelieved and punished by my own father. It was a harsh realization that the person who was supposed to protect and love me unconditionally was now the source of my deepest pain. The days following my confinement were some of the darkest I had ever experienced. Trapped and feeling utterly alone, I realized my only hope lay in my grandmother, my father's mother. She was kind and loving and had always shown me affection, but I had never dared to burden her with my troubles at home. One evening, I was sure Diane and my father were occupied. I gathered the courage to call my grandmother. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. "Hello," her familiar warm voice came through the phone. "Grandma, it's me, Julie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Julie, my dear, how are you?" she asked, her tone filled with genuine care. Tears welled up in my eyes as I replied, "Grandma, I need help. Can I come and stay with you for a while?" There was a moment of silence on the other end. "What's wrong, Julie? Did something happen?" I took a deep breath, the words rushing out. "It's Diane. She's been hurting me, and Dad won't believe me. I don't know what to do." I could hear the concern in her voice as she quickly responded, "Of course, my dear. You come right over." "I'll take care of this," Grandma said. The next day she arrived. Though she was small, her presence filled the room. She confronted my father with surprising strength. "Tyler, I'm taking Julie with me. She's not safe here," she declared firmly. My father, taken aback, tried to protest. "Mom, you can't just take her. She's my daughter." "Your daughter, whom you failed to protect," she countered sharply. "I won't stand by and watch her suffer." Diane tried to intervene. "She's just a child making up stories. You can't believe her over us." Grandma turned to Diane, her eyes steely. "I know a scared child when I see one. Julie is coming with me, and if you try to stop me, I'll take this matter to the authorities." Realizing he was defeated, my father didn't put up any further resistance. As I gathered my things, I saw Diane's expression change from defiant to defeated. Leaving the house with my grandmother, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt safe. The car ride to Grandma's was quiet, but her presence was comforting. Once we arrived, she turned to me and said, "You're safe now, Julie. You don't have to worry anymore." In my grandmother's house, I found the love and security that had been missing in my life. It was a haven where I could heal and regain my strength. The contrast between her nurturing home and the coldness of my father's house was stark. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again, free from the fear and anxiety that had plagued me. Years passed since I left my father's house to live with my grandmother. Her home was a sanctuary, a place of healing and love. But time moved on, and with it came another wave of change. My beloved grandmother passed away, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. At the funeral, my father and Diane showed up, their faces a mix of fake sorrow and poorly disguised eagerness. It was clear they were more interested in what they might gain from her passing than in mourning her loss. After the funeral, as we gathered at my grandmother's house, Diane wasted no time. "Well, Julie, I suppose you'll be finding a new place to live now. This house and everything in it belongs to your father," she said, her voice tinged with barely concealed glee. My father nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the room as if already planning what to do with the house. I couldn't help but smile, a reaction that seemed to confuse them. "Actually, that's where you're wrong," I said, the confidence in my voice taking them by surprise. "What do you mean?" my father asked, his expression shifting to one of confusion. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "Grandma left a will. She gave the house and a lot of money to me," I explained, watching as their faces changed from confusion to shock. "But you're just a child. I'm your father. I should be in charge of any inheritance you get," my father stammered, his entitlement clear. Diane's voice was shrill. "Yes, until you come of age, your father will manage your property." Their reactions were almost amusing. "You don't care about me at all. You didn't even wish me a happy birthday. I turned 19 a month ago. I'm legally an adult now. I make my own decisions," I stated firmly, enjoying the realization dawning on their faces. My father's expression turned from shock to anger, then to desperate pleading. "Julie, you can't do this. We're your family." I looked at them, memories of my childhood flooding back. "You stopped being my family a long time ago," I said, my voice steady. Diane stepped forward, now begging. "At least let us stay in the house. We have nowhere else to go. We haven't extended the lease on our house." I shook my head. "This is my house now. You'll need to find somewhere else." As they left, years of pain and neglect seemed to lift off my shoulders. I stood in the house that was now mine, filled with memories of my grandmother's love, and felt a sense of closure. The echoes of the past, stirred by my father's call, remained. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a sense of injustice. But amid all that, there was also a sense of strength, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through the darkest times.
My name is Megan, and I'm a 20-year-old university student from Texas. My parents divorced when I was 10, and since then, I've been living with my mom. Last year, I faced one of the most challenging moments of my life. My father passed away after a battle with cancer. We were incredibly close, and his death was a huge blow. In his will, he left me a significant amount of money, but I could only access it once I turned 20. This year, when I finally turned 20, something unexpected and unbelievable happened. My stepdad, Paul, who's in his mid-30s and has been married to my mom for 3 years, called me into his room. We've never had the best relationship, but I've always tried to be polite and civil with him, even though he hasn't always treated me well. During this conversation, Paul brought up the money my dad had left me. He said I should give it to my stepbrother, Charles, because he needed it for his college education. Charles wanted to attend university, just like me, and Paul thought it was only fair that I hand over my inheritance to help him out. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that Paul was actually asking me to give away the money that my father had left specifically for me. I told him, "Paul, I don't think I can do that. This money was left to me by my dad. What if I need it in the future?" But Paul wasn't having it. He dismissed my concerns, saying, "Don't be ridiculous, Megan. You don't need that money, and even if you do, Charles needs it more." I stood my ground and replied firmly, "I'm sorry, but the answer is no." This made Paul angry. He warned me, "Megan, don't push me." Trying to stay calm, I told him, "There's no need to get angry. I'm just being honest. Saying no isn't about disrespecting you. It's about setting boundaries. I'm standing up for myself, and if that makes you mad, then maybe you need to think about your attitude. Remember, Paul, you're a guest in this house too, so let's try to be civil." Before he could say anything else, I walked out. His behavior didn't surprise me at all, given how he's acted in the past. I had a feeling he would eventually try to get his hands on that money. You might be wondering where my mom was during all of this. Well, that's a whole other story. My mom seems to be blind to Paul's flaws and stands by him no matter what, almost like she's under a spell. She loves me, but I've tried not to ruin her perception of him, so I've always done my best to get along with Paul for her sake. It's strange how, despite being one of the youngest in the house, I feel like I have to be the most responsible and level-headed one. I often found myself having to be the most mature person in the house, even though I was the youngest. My mom, Teresa, was out of town during this whole ordeal, which is why she wasn't there to witness it. If she had been, I'm sure she would have been furious with Paul. That's probably why he thought he could push me around while she was away. But what he didn't realize was that I was fully aware of his sneaky intentions. After I walked out of the room, Paul followed me, scolding me and accusing me of being a bad sister because I refused to give the money to Charles. His accusation was far from the truth. I do care about Charles and want to help him, but not by giving up the money my dad left for me. It felt like Paul was just trying to manipulate me into doing what he wanted. When people say, like father, like son, they might as well be talking about Paul and Charles. These two troublemakers reminded me of Pinky and the brain you can decide who's who based on what happened next. As I continued to walk away, Paul shouted after me, "Hey, don't walk away while I'm talking to you. You need to listen and do what's right." I turned back to him and asked, "Can you give me a good reason why I should?" Before he could respond, Charles, who had been woken up by our arguing, joined the conversation. "What's going on with you two? Your arguing woke me up," he said. Paul quickly jumped in. "Charles, tell Megan what we talked about earlier." Charles hesitated for a moment before saying, "Sure. What was it again?" "Oh, right, the inheritance money. Yeah, Megan, Dad, and I were talking, and we need that money for something important." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean for your college tuition?" Paul interrupted, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "Yeah, that's right. It's for your university, Charles." Charles nodded, clearly confused. "Oh, yeah, I completely forgot. I just woke up, you know. Yes, it's for university. I want to attend, and I need the money for myself." I couldn't help but smirk at how poorly rehearsed their act was. Well, that's a cute attempt, but not cute enough. The answer is still no. Charles protested. "Why not, Megan? I know what I want, and this isn't up for discussion. We're getting that money." "We'll see about that," I replied calmly, though the tension in the room was thick. The rest of the evening was filled with awkward silence. Paul was known for his silly pranks and attempts to get under my skin, but this was different. It was a deliberate effort to manipulate me, and I wasn't going to let it slide. As much as I wanted to tell my mom what was happening, I decided to handle the situation on my own for now. I wanted to keep dealing with Paul and Charles directly, especially after I realized how far they were willing to go. Megan, stop playing around. You need to be a grown-up and do the right thing, Paul said, trying to sound authoritative. I couldn't help but scoff. And the right thing is giving away my money? Are you serious, Paul? Just wait until I tell Mom. His reaction was immediate and unexpected. Don't tell Teresa anything, he snapped. Why not? She's my mom. She deserves to know how I'm being treated. Paul's tone shifted to one of false concern. You think she cares? Listen, I'm just trying to help you. If you bring this up to her, she'll only get upset with you for wasting her time and being selfish. I looked him straight in the eye and said, Well, Paul, that's a risk I'm willing to take. His angry tone surprised me as he growled, I'm warning you, don't tell your mother. At that moment, I realized just how desperate and manipulative he was. But I wasn't about to back down. This was my life, my money, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even Paul, push me around. I had never seen Paul so worked up, especially over something like this. It was clear that something was going on, especially with that business idea Charles accidentally mentioned. They must think I'm not smart enough to catch on, and Paul's strong reaction to me talking to my mom only made me more suspicious. As soon as I could, I went to talk to my mom. Hey, Mom, how are you doing? I'm good, baby. How about you? She replied warmly. Not very well, Mom. Something's off with Paul and Charles, especially Paul. He's acting weirder than usual, I said, trying to sound calm. Oh, Megan, don't be paranoid. I know you don't really like him, but he's not weird, she responded, trying to reassure me. Mom, he asked me for the inheritance money, I said, getting straight to the point.
What?
Really? She asked, surprised. Actually, he demanded the money. Both he and Charles, I clarified, hoping she'd see how serious this was. That's not true. He wouldn't do that, she said, clearly in disbelief. I know you love him, Mom, for whatever reason, but this is true. He said it's for Charles's education, but I think something fishy is going on. He even got pretty aggressive when I told him I'd tell you what he said to me. I explained, trying to make her see the situation from my perspective. I don't know, baby. I just feel like I need more proof, she said, still hesitant. Don't worry, I'll get all the proof you need. Just wait and see, I promised her. Even though my mom wasn't ready to fully believe me yet, I was determined to uncover what was really going on. I kept telling myself that man had put some kind of spell on her. Later that night, I decided to do some digging. I used the family computer and found something shocking. It looked like Paul had forgotten to log out of his email account, his mistake. What I found was more than concerning. Paul had been exchanging emails with a woman named Maria, and they were far from friendly. It looked like he was having an affair. I took careful notes on what I discovered, but what I found next was even more disturbing. The emails discussed Paul divorcing my mom and running away with Maria. They mentioned getting a large sum of money soon for some kind of business, but from what I read, it seemed shady. While Paul wasn't stupid enough to put anything illegal in his emails, he was dumb enough to have an affair and forget to log out of his account. I knew I needed more information, so the next day, I decided to see if I could get anything out of Charles. I made sure to record our conversation on my phone. Hey, Charles, I greeted him casually. Hello, Megan, he replied, sounding unusually cheerful. You seem happy today, I noted, trying to ease into the conversation. Why not? It's a beautiful day, he said, clearly in a good mood. I have some questions for you. I began. I've been thinking about what you and Paul said, and I'm considering giving you the money. Really? That's great. I'll let him know, Charles responded excitedly. Not so fast, I stopped him. Before I give you this money, it is for your college, right? Oh, yeah, right. My college tuition, he stammered, clearly caught off guard. Yes, right, I said, pretending to go along with it. I needed more information, and I could tell Charles was the weak link in their plan. I needed to be sure you were serious about getting this money, I said, my tone firm. Yes, I'm very serious, Charles replied quickly, though I could sense some nervousness. Are you sure? And what about Maria? Is she serious too? I asked, watching his reaction closely. Maria? Who's Maria? Charles stammered, clearly caught off guard. Oh, she's, a student advisor for the college, he quickly added, but I knew something was off. Before I could press further, Paul suddenly walked into the room. The tension immediately skyrocketed. I don't appreciate you interrogating my son, he said, his voice cold. I wasn't interrogating him, I replied, trying to stay calm. I was just asking how my money would be used. Well, once you give someone money, it's not yours anymore, so it's not your business, Paul shot back. Is that any way to speak to someone who's thinking of giving you money? I asked, my patience wearing thin. You're not thinking, you're giving me that money. If you don't, I'll kick you out, Paul threatened. I was stunned, and so was Charles. Dad, this wasn't part of Charles began, but Paul cut him off sharply. Shut up. I'm the parent and I make the rules. If you don't give me that inheritance money, you can leave, Paul barked. I decided to keep quiet, but little did Paul know, I was still recording the entire conversation. I had caught him in the act. Without another word, I walked out of the room, giving Paul an angry look and locked myself in my bedroom. Once inside, I began collecting all the evidence I had against him. It felt like I was one of those detectives on TV, gathering clues and piecing everything together. I had voice recordings, screenshots of Paul's emails with Maria, and every detail I could find. I knew a storm was coming, and I was ready. After organizing everything, I called my mom. Hello, Mom. Hey, love, how are you? She answered. Mom, are you sitting down? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Why? What's wrong? She asked, immediately concerned. I'm afraid I have some really bad news to share and you won't like it, I said, bracing myself for her reaction. I started telling her everything I had discovered. At first, she was in denial, refusing to believe it. But then I made her listen to the audio recording of Paul's threats. That's when she started to break down. Why would he say those things to you? Why would he do that to me? Why would he be so cruel? She asked, her voice shaking. Because he's a bad man, Mom. I'm sorry to say it, but you married a monster, I replied gently. This is just terrible. I can't believe I left you alone with those two sickos, she said, her voice filled with regret. Absolutely not. I'm coming home right now. You stay where you are. Have you locked your door? She asked urgently. Yes, ma'am, I replied. I'm going to ruin that man and make sure he never shows his face in public again. When I'm done with him, he'll wish he never married me, she vowed. That's the spirit, Mom. Now hurry up and get home. We need to make a plan, I said, feeling a sense of relief knowing she was on her way. My mom arrived several hours later and came straight to my room. We hugged and cried together for what felt like hours. The bond between us had never been stronger, and we both knew that no matter what happened next, we would face it together. I could tell the news was hard for my mom to hear, but I was relieved that she had moved into the anger stage. Her anger fueled her to take action, and that was exactly what we needed. We talked for hours, and by the end of our conversation, we had a solid plan in place. A few days passed, and Paul seemed puzzled by my mom's sudden return from her work trip. He couldn't understand why she was home early, or why she was giving him the cold shoulder. He put on an overly cheerful front, trying too hard to convince her of his innocence. But my mom wasn't fooled. She saw right through his act and was preparing to kick him out. After I showed her the suspicious messages about his so-called business, my mom decided to hire a private investigator. She had a strong suspicion that the money wasn't going to be used for anything legal, and that made her furious. She couldn't comprehend how a parent could be so deceitful and cruel. We both knew this situation was too big for us to handle alone. 5 days later, the private investigator shared his findings with my mom, who then sat me down to tell me everything. I'm speechless, I said, trying to process what she had just told me. Well, it turns out he's planning to use a laundromat for money laundering. It's an old trick, she explained. Wow, that's shocking. But there's more, isn't there? I asked, sensing that the worst was yet to come. Yes, there's more, she continued, her voice filled with disbelief. This woman, Maria, the one he's cheating on me with, has a criminal record. She's been arrested multiple times for drug-related activities. It wouldn't be surprising if their business involves drugs too. That's unbelievable. I never would have expected this. It's like a veil has been lifted from my eyes. The man you married isn't a man at all, he's a sick and twisted person, I said, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. When are we going to confront him, Mom? I asked, ready to take the next step.
Right now.
Follow my lead, she replied, her determination clear. Wait, let me get my camera, I said, grabbing my phone. We walked into the living room and found Charles and Paul deep in conversation, discussing their shady business plans. And then we'll use this as a cover for our business. It's all going to be hidden, just act like you don't know anything and serve the customers, okay?
Paul was saying.
But what about, Charles started to ask, but then they noticed us. Oh, hey everyone, we're just finalizing stuff for Charles's college application, Paul said, trying to play it off. Cut the act, Paul. The game is up. We know everything, my mom said firmly. What do you mean? Paul asked, his smile fading. Your innocent act won't work anymore, I added, holding up my phone. Smile for the camera. Get that out of my face, you spoiled brat, I mean Megan, Paul snapped, his true colors showing. We know everything, Paul. Do you realize how many years you could spend in jail for planning these crimes? My mom asked, her voice cold and resolute. The confrontation was intense, and as Paul's facade crumbled, the reality of his actions began to sink in. My mom and I had the evidence we needed, and there was no way he could talk his way out of this. I don't know what you're talking about, Paul stammered, trying to maintain his composure. Maybe we should call Maria and see what she has to say, I suggested, pushing him further. You two think you know everything, Paul sneered. Maria is just a friend. Well, the explicit photos suggest otherwise, I shot back. Who even uses emails to cheat nowadays? It's so dumb. Paul's face reddened with anger. You went through my things? How dare you? No, Paul. My mom cut in, her voice full of rage. How dare you? How dare you threaten my daughter multiple times, trying to take money that doesn't belong to you? How dare you threaten to kick her out of my house? Are you sick in the head? How dare you involve your son in your foolish schemes, putting him at risk? And how dare you plan to use that money for illegal activities? Now you've got nothing to say, huh? We know everything, and we're going to take you down. Get that camera out of my face, Paul shouted, his voice trembling with fury. He suddenly lunged at me, but I was too quick for him, dodging out of the way. His aggressive behavior was terrifying. You want to attack my daughter? It's like you're asking to go to prison, my mom said, her voice steady despite the situation. You think you know everything, but you know nothing. Yeah, well, tell that to the police, who should be here any second now, I added confidently. Police? Paul's voice faltered. Yes, the police, my mom confirmed. Your behavior today just sealed your fate. At that moment, we heard police sirens approaching. I had never seen Paul look like that before. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure terror. All the color drained from his face. Please, Teresa, you don't have to do this. I can explain everything, Paul pleaded, his bravado completely gone. Save it for the judge, you cockroach, my mom snapped. You disgust me. And Charles, don't think you're off the hook. Both of you are getting arrested. Maybe this will teach you a lesson about mistreating my daughter and me. I know you're a kid, Charles, but you're old enough to know better, and for that, you need to be punished. Yes, Mom, Charles muttered, looking down. Come on, Rachel. Paul tried one last time. Don't you think this is a bit too much? On the contrary, it's not enough, my mom replied coldly. How's our live stream, Megan? We've got over 2,850 people watching, I said, holding up my phone. This is going to be big. Oh, and in case it wasn't clear, my mom added, her voice dripping with contempt, I want a divorce. That's right, over 2,850 people witnessed the entire mess live, and it didn't take long for the news to spread to local newspapers and tabloids. It was surreal to be in the middle of it all, dealing with my sick ex-stepfather and his son. But in the end, it was incredibly satisfying to see Paul's downfall. He lost everything, his job, his friends, and even some family members who no longer want anything to do with him. He's now facing serious charges for all his schemes, and if the judge decides, he could spend up to 22 years in prison. The police also tracked down Maria, who had been hiding when everything started unraveling. She's facing the same charges as Paul. On our side, life was good. The whole situation brought my mom and me closer together. On weekends, we'd often sit on the patio, drinks in hand, and laugh about how foolish and evil Paul had been. Good riddance, indeed. Hi, I'm Lauren, and before I jump into this crazy story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss this wild adventure. Now, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm a 35-year-old single mom, working hard to give my daughter, Kelly, the best life I possibly can. I work as a paralegal, and it's just been the two of us ever since her dad, Scott, decided that being a father wasn't for him. He left when Kelly was just 4 years old. Kelly is 18, and she's the light of my life. She's smart, kind, and beautiful, both inside and out. I'm so proud of the person she's becoming. Recently, Kelly told me about something that made her really excited. Prom. One day after school, she came running into the house with the biggest smile on her face. "Mom, Larry asked me to prom," she squealed. Of course, I was thrilled for her. I hugged her tight and said, "That's amazing, sweetie. We need to find you the perfect dress for the big night." Little did I know, that dress would end up causing a lot more drama than I ever could have imagined. Now, there's something you should know about our family situation. Even though Scott has been out of the picture for years, his mom, Julie, and his sister, Evelyn, are still very much a part of our lives. Don't ask me why, it's complicated. Let's just say that dealing with Julie and Evelyn is about as enjoyable as going to the dentist and getting a root canal without any painkillers. They're not exactly the warmest, most supportive people in the world, but somehow they're still around. When Kelly mentioned prom during one of our monthly family dinners, you should have seen the looks on Julie and Evelyn's faces. Julie, my ex-mother-in-law, pursed her lips in disapproval, and you could just feel the judgment radiating off her. "Prom?" she asked, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Isn't that a bit of a waste of time?" Evelyn, my ex-sister-in-law, was quick to chime in too. "Yeah, shouldn't you be focusing on your college applications instead?" she asked, giving Kelly one of her famous judgmental looks. I was biting my tongue so hard, trying not to explode. But Kelly, bless her, held her ground. "I can do both, and Evelyn," she said calmly. "And I'm really excited about prom." The tension in the room was thicker than Julie's infamous meatloaf, but I was proud of how Kelly handled it. Later, when we went shopping for a dress, Kelly found the most beautiful blue gown. It made her eyes light up, and she looked so happy. "Mom, it's perfect," she said, her face glowing with excitement. Then I looked at the price tag, and my heart sank a little. It was definitely more expensive than I had hoped. But seeing the joy on Kelly's face made it all worth it. "You're going to be the belle of the ball, sweetie," I told her as I swiped my credit card. I knew in that moment that this was something she would remember forever, and I didn't want anything to ruin it for her. Later, we showed Julie and Evelyn the dress. Their reactions? Well, let's just say they weren't exactly positive. Julie sniffed. "It's a bit revealing, don't you think?" Evelyn, never missing a chance to criticize, added, "And that color? It's not really your best, Kelly." I could see the excitement drain from Kelly's face, and my blood was boiling. How could they be so negative about something that was making her so happy? I took a deep breath and said, "I think she looks absolutely beautiful." That moment was a real eye-opener for me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shield Kelly from their negativity. But I realized something important. Kelly is strong. She can stand up for herself, and she knows her worth. Despite the drama, she's going to shine, and nothing Julie or Evelyn says can take that away from her. Prom is a special time, and I'm determined to make sure Kelly feels as beautiful and confident as she deserves. No matter what anyone else thinks, this is her moment, and I'm so proud to be by her side. As we move forward, I know there will be more challenges, but we'll face them together, just like we always have. Over the next few weeks, Kelly was totally caught up in all things prom. She and her friends spent hours talking about corsages, limos, and after parties. The excitement was contagious, But every time Julie or Evelyn, my ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law, were around, they couldn't help but make snide remarks. Evelyn would throw in comments like, "You're not wearing heels, are you? You'll tower over poor Larry." Or Julie would say, "I hope you're not planning to stay out too late." It wasn't easy watching them chip away at Kelly's happiness. I didn't want to step in too much, thinking that Kelly could handle herself. But as time went on, I could see their negativity was getting to her. Every time they made one of those comments, I saw her confidence drop a little more. The night before prom finally arrived, and Kelly was a mix of nerves and excitement. We spent the evening getting ready for the big day, doing her nails, hair, and going over last-minute details. It was supposed to be a fun bonding time, but I could tell Kelly was anxious. "Mom, what if something goes wrong?" she fretted, her face full of worry. I squeezed her hand and said, "Nothing's going to go wrong. Tomorrow is going to be perfect." As I carefully hung up her beautiful blue prom dress, making sure it was wrinkle-free for the next day, I had no idea just how wrong I was. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who end up hurting you the worst. That evening, I realized we were missing a few items: hairspray, bobby pins, the usual last-minute things. Julie and Evelyn, surprisingly, offered to come over and help Kelly with some of the final preparations while I ran to the store. It was an unexpected offer. "That's really nice of you," I said, trying to hide my surprise. I didn't entirely trust their sudden enthusiasm, but I wanted to believe they were finally being supportive. As I left, I saw them heading upstairs with Kelly. A small voice inside me told me something wasn't right, but I ignored it, wanting to believe that everything was fine. Little did I know, that decision would lead to a night I'd never forget, and not in a good way. I rushed through the store, excited to get back home and finish our fun night of prom prep. I even grabbed some of Kelly's favorite snacks as a little surprise. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. Julie and Evelyn's cars were still there. That was odd. I had expected them to leave by now. I quietly entered the house, hoping to surprise Kelly. As I climbed the stairs, I heard hushed voices coming from her room. My heart began to race. And then, I heard the unmistakable sound of scissors snipping. A sinking feeling hit me, and I crept closer to Kelly's room, my pulse quickening with each step. When I pushed open the door, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. There, in the middle of the room, stood Julie and Evelyn, scissors in hand. Blue fabric scraps were scattered around them, and on the bed lay my daughter's beautiful prom dress cut into pieces. My heart dropped. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed, dropping the shopping bags in shock. Julie and Evelyn spun around, their faces pale as they stared at me. "Lauren, we were just," Evelyn stammered, her voice shaking. "Just what?" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "Destroying my daughter's dress? Have you completely lost your minds?" Julie, still holding the scissors, looked like a deer caught in headlights. "We were just trying to help," she said weakly, but her words only fueled my rage. "Help? How is cutting up Kelly's dress supposed to help?" I demanded, feeling my blood boil. All I could think about was how hard Kelly had worked to make this night special, how much she had been looking forward to it. And now, her dress, the dress she had fallen in love with, was ruined, thanks to these two. Julie tried to defend herself, mumbling something about how the dress was too revealing and how they thought it was best to make some adjustments, but I wasn't hearing any of it. I was too furious. How could they do this to her? How could they take something so special and destroy it? As I stood there, staring at the wreckage of the dress, I realized I couldn't fix this. No matter what I did, prom night was already tainted by their cruelty. But one thing was clear. I would make sure that Kelly knew her worth, no matter what Julie and Evelyn tried to do. This was their attempt to tear us down, but they didn't realize how strong we were. I was shaking with rage, unable to believe what was happening. Julie, my ex-mother-in-law, stepped forward, her chin raised in that same defiant way she always did when she thought she was right. "We're doing what's best for Kelly," she said. "That dress was inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I shot back. "It's a prom dress, not some stripper outfit." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. Prom was supposed to be a magical night for Kelly, and here they were, tearing it apart. Evelyn, my ex-sister-in-law, quickly joined in. We were just trying to protect her reputation. You wouldn't understand, she said, her voice full of judgment, as if I was the one who didn't care about my own daughter. At that moment, it all started to make sense. Memories came rushing back, the rude comments about my parenting, the accidental spills on Kelly's favorite clothes, the times they had conveniently forgotten to pick her up from school.
It was all clear now.
They had been trying to control and sabotage her happiness all along. You've always been jealous, I said aloud, the realization hitting me hard. You can't stand to see Kelly happy. Julie scoffed, rolling her eyes. Don't be ridiculous. We love Kelly. Love? This isn't love, I fired back. This is control and manipulation. Before I could say more, I heard a small gasp from the doorway. I turned to see Kelly standing there, her eyes wide with horror. She had just walked in on this entire mess. Her face crumpled as she looked at the shredded pieces of her prom dress. My dress, she whispered, her voice shaky and full of disbelief. Tears began to well up in her eyes. I rushed over to her and pulled her into a tight hug. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry, I whispered, feeling my heart break for her. Kelly couldn't hold back anymore. She started sobbing in my arms. Through her tears, she looked at Julie and Evelyn. Why would you do this?
Grandma?
Aunt Evelyn? How could you? Her voice was full of confusion and hurt. Julie, somehow, still had the nerve to act offended. We were trying to help, dear. That dress was much too revealing for someone your age. Get out, I growled, my voice low but steady. I had had enough. Get out of my house right now. Evelyn tried to protest. But we were just out, I yelled, pointing to the door, my voice leaving no room for argument. Julie and Evelyn quickly grabbed their things and scurried out like the snakes they were. As soon as they were gone, I turned my attention back to Kelly, who was still crying. She looked up at me, her face full of worry. What am I going to do, Mom? Prom's tomorrow, and my dress is ruined. I held her tight, trying to figure out a plan. I didn't know how I was going to fix this. It was late, and all the dress shops would be closed by now. But I couldn't let Kelly down. We'll figure something out, sweetie. I promise, I said, trying to sound confident even though I had no idea what to do. As I comforted Kelly, one thing became clear in my mind. Julie and Evelyn had gone too far this time. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. They had been manipulating us for years, but this was the final straw. They would face the consequences of their actions. But first, I needed to fix this dress situation. I had less than 48 hours to pull off a miracle. Talk about a mother's worst nightmare. Eventually, Kelly cried herself to sleep, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. Once she was resting, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. This wasn't just about a ruined dress anymore. It was about years of bullying and cruelty from Julie and Evelyn. I wasn't going to let them continue to hurt Kelly. I picked up my phone and made a call I hadn't planned on. I dialed Scott, my ex-husband, who hadn't been around much but still needed to know what was happening. We need to talk. It's about Kelly, I said. 50 minutes later, Scott was at my door, looking concerned. What's going on, Lauren? He asked, his voice serious. I filled him in on everything that had happened, the dress, the years of Julie and Evelyn's behavior. All of it. As I spoke, his face grew darker with every word. He had no idea it had gotten this bad. We need to fix this, he said, his voice firm. For once, Scott was stepping up. We didn't have much time, but together, we were going to make sure Kelly's prom night was saved. The dress was ruined, but her night didn't have to be. And as for Julie and Evelyn, they were finally going to face the consequences for all the harm they'd caused. I can't believe my own mother and sister would do this, Scott said, shaking his head in disbelief. Believe it, I replied firmly. And it's not just this. Think about when Kelly wasn't invited to Evelyn's kids' birthday parties, or when Julie accidentally spilled wine on Kelly's graduation dress. Scott's eyes widened as if a light bulb had gone off. You think those things were intentional? I don't just think they were, I said. I know they were. And we're going to prove it. That night, we spent hours calling friends and family, putting together the pieces of a much larger puzzle. As we started digging, stories about Julie and Evelyn's behavior over the years came pouring in. It was like opening Pandora's box. My friend Madison, who had known us for years, chimed in. Remember when Julie told everyone Kelly cheated on that math test? I always knew that wasn't true. Scott's cousin Paul added, Evelyn once told me Kelly was spreading rumors about my daughter. I should have known better than to believe her. By morning, we had a list of incidents spanning years. It was clear that Julie and Evelyn had been up to their cruel antics for a long time, and Kelly wasn't their only victim. We had enough evidence to confront them, but we wanted to do it the right way, so it would stick. It was time to call in some professional help. I reached out to my old college roommate, Cheryl, who was now a sharp lawyer. We met at a local cafe where I laid out everything we had uncovered. As Cheryl listened, her face grew serious. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. This is some serious stuff, Lauren. We're talking harassment, defamation, and with the dress situation, maybe even destruction of property. What can we do? I asked, feeling both anxious and hopeful. Well, legally, we could pursue charges, Cheryl explained. But since it's family, there might be a better way to handle this without going through a long legal battle. That's when an idea hit me. The annual family reunion was coming up in 3 weeks, and everyone would be there, including all the people we'd spoken to. I leaned in closer to Cheryl. What if we expose them in front of the whole family? A slow smile spread across Cheryl's face. Now that's an idea I can get behind. Let's plan this out. Over the next few days, we started working on the plan while helping Kelly get ready for prom. Thankfully, a 48-hour tailor and my emergency credit card saved the day, and we managed to get her a new dress just in time. As we took care of prom details, we also gathered everything we needed for the big reveal at the reunion. We collected photos, screenshots of text messages, and even security camera footage from my house, which clearly showed Julie and Evelyn with Kelly's ruined dress. Scott, determined to help, reached out to extended family members, subtly making sure everyone would be at the reunion. He didn't give away any details, but he hinted that there would be something important to discuss. Madison, who had been a huge help from the beginning, put together a slideshow of all the evidence we had gathered. Paul offered to be our tech guy, making sure everything ran smoothly on the big day. We wanted to make sure Julie and Evelyn couldn't wriggle out of this one. During one of our planning sessions, I said, we need to make sure they can't deny anything or twist the story. Cheryl nodded in agreement. I've drafted a statement that details all their actions. After the presentation, we'll give everyone a copy, so there's no confusion. As the reunion day got closer, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. This confrontation was long overdue. Julie and Evelyn had caused pain for years, but they had no idea what was coming. It was time to put a stop to their toxic behavior, once and for all. The night before the reunion, Kelly came up to me, looking thoughtful. Mom, she said quietly, are you sure about this? It seems intense. I looked at her, knowing that she was worried about the fallout. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. They've hurt too many people for too long. It's time they face the consequences of what they've done. This isn't just about you or me, it's about everyone they've manipulated and harmed. Kelly nodded, though I could see she was still processing everything. I just don't want anyone else to get hurt. I hugged her tightly. I know, sweetie, but this time, we're doing the right thing. We're standing up for ourselves and for everyone else they've hurt. She took a deep breath and smiled. Okay, Mom, let's do this. The stage was set and we were ready. Julie and Evelyn were about to face the truth, and this time, they wouldn't be able to hide behind their lies. I hugged Kelly tightly. Sweetie, sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even if they're family. Especially when they're family, I said softly. Scott chimed in. Your mom's right, kiddo. What they did to you isn't okay, and it's time everyone knows the truth. Kelly nodded slowly, taking it all in. Okay, I trust you guys. As I laid out my outfit for the family reunion that night, I took a deep breath. Tomorrow would change everything. Julie and Evelyn thought they could get away with manipulating and hurting us, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. Scott, who was helping me plan, asked as he was leaving, "Ready for tomorrow?" I nodded, feeling more determined than ever. More than ready. It's time to end this once and for all. Let the show begin. The day of the family reunion arrived, and my stomach was full of nerves. Kelly, Scott, and I got to the venue early to set up for our presentation with the help of Paul, Scott's cousin. As family members started arriving, I caught sight of Julie and Evelyn. They were all smiles and hugs, acting like nothing had happened. It made my blood boil to see them so carefree after everything they'd done. Once everyone was settled and the reunion was in full swing, I stood up and cleared my throat. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. There's something important we need to discuss." Julie looked confused, but tried to keep her cool. "Lauren, dear, what's this about?" I took a deep breath. "It's about the years of manipulation, lies, and cruelty that you and Evelyn have inflicted on Kelly and the rest of the family." The room went dead silent. Paul dimmed the lights, and the slideshow began. As the first video clip played, showing Julie and Evelyn cutting up Kelly's prom dress on our security camera, there were gasps from everyone. I continued. "Last week, Julie and Evelyn destroyed Kelly's prom dress. The evidence was there for everyone to see clear as day. One by one, we went through incident after incident. We showed the snubs from birthday parties, the ruined clothes, and the rumors they had spread. With each new piece of evidence, the shock and disgust in the room grew. Family members were visibly upset, realizing how far Julie and Evelyn had gone. Evelyn jumped up, trying to defend herself. "This is ridiculous. We've never done anything to hurt Kelly." But her words fell flat. The room was no longer on their side. Cousin Isabella spoke up. "So, that's why you told me Kelly couldn't come to my wedding? You said she was sick. Was that a lie too?" Uncle Timothy added, "And the time you told me Kelly was talking bad about my son, that was a lie as well, wasn't it?" Julie and Evelyn's faces turned pale. They looked around the room, desperate to find someone to support them, but there were no allies left. Everyone had seen the truth. That's when Cheryl, my lawyer friend, stepped forward, looking every bit the professional. "What you've done to this family constitutes harassment and defamation. Not to mention the destruction of property with the prom dress incident. We have grounds for legal action." Julie, still in denial, scoffed. "You wouldn't dare. We're family." I stepped forward, my voice firm and steady. "Being family doesn't give you the right to treat us like this. You've hurt us for years, and you've hurt Kelly the most. Family is supposed to love and support each other, not tear one another down." Evelyn, now panicking, tried one last time to defend herself. "We were just trying to look out for her." I shook my head.
No.
"You were trying to control her. You were trying to control all of us. But not anymore." The room was tense, but the air was different now. People weren't just bystanders anymore, they were standing with us. Julie and Evelyn had finally been exposed for what they truly were, bullies, even to their own family. By the end of the reunion, it was clear that Julie and Evelyn had lost the support they once had. They left the event with their heads down, knowing they could no longer manipulate anyone with their lies. As Kelly, Scott, and I drove home that evening, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Justice had been served, and we had stood up for ourselves. Kelly, sitting beside me, smiled softly. "Thanks, Mom," she said, "for everything." I smiled back. "You deserve to be happy, sweetie. No one's ever going to take that from you again." I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Family doesn't do what you've done. You've left us no choice." The reaction was immediate. Other family members started speaking up, sharing their own stories about how Julie and Evelyn had manipulated them over the years.
It was as if a dam had burst.
In the end, we didn't have to press charges. The family decided for themselves to cut Julie and Evelyn out of their lives. No more invitations, no more contact. The truth was finally out, and everyone saw Julie and Evelyn for who they really were. Kelly's prom night turned out to be a huge success. She looked absolutely stunning in her new dress, which was even more beautiful than the one they had ruined. She was glowing with happiness. As she was about to leave for the night, she smiled at me and said, "Mom, thank you for for everything. I hug her tightly, trying to hold back my tears. Always, sweetie. I'll always have your back. Later that night, I sat quietly reflecting on everything that had happened. I realized something important. Standing up to toxic people, even if they're family, is never easy, but it's necessary. We do it not just for ourselves, but for the people we care about. It was hard, but it was the right thing to do. And that's the end of Lauren and Kelly's story. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Lauren was right to expose Julie and Evelyn's behavior to the entire family? Or should she have handled it more privately? Is it ever okay to confront family members publicly when they've been toxic? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion could help others who are dealing with similar family conflicts. If this story resonated with you and you want to hear more like it, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more real-life stories like this to light. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Life was moving along smoothly for me. At 29, designing apps wasn't just a career, it was my passion, my creative playground. I had always been the kind of person who stood firmly on my own 3 feet, never needing anyone to guide me through life's twists and turns. My parents, though miles away in another city, were always just a phone call away. But it had been years since I'd needed anything more from them than their love and advice. My cozy apartment was my sanctuary, a safe and familiar space just a short walk from the design studio where I spent my days turning ideas into reality. Work never really felt like work because I loved every part of it. I wasn't one for the wild club scene or late-night parties. My idea of a perfect evening? Diving deep into the latest design trends, analyzing the genius of the greats in my field, or simply sketching out my next big idea. But if there was one thing I loved just as much as designing, it was the outdoors. The quiet solitude of the park near my place was my escape from the digital world, a space where my mind could breathe. It was my little retreat, my thinking spot. And that's exactly where my life took an unexpected turn. I still remember the day vividly. The sun hung just right in the sky, warm but not harsh, casting a golden glow over the park. It was the kind of day that made everything feel lighter. I had my headphones in, lost in thought, probably overanalyzing a project, when I stepped onto the bike path without a second glance. Out of nowhere, there was a sharp screech of tires against pavement.
Whoa.
Watch where you're going, a voice barked, thick with a mix of annoyance and relief. Startled, I yanked out my headphones, heart racing. Oh shoot, I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking, I blurted out. The guy on the bike was still catching his breath, his hands gripping the handlebars tightly. But as he exhaled, I saw the tension melt away. A smirk played at the corners of his lips. You okay though? Didn't mean to scare you, he asked, tilting his head slightly. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a bit shaken. And you? I'll live, he said, relaxing as he leaned against his bike. Bikes can be replaced, people, not so much. That was the moment I met Paul. He wasn't like the people I usually surrounded myself with. Paul was a city guy through and through, working at a car sales company, always with a story to tell. He had this effortless charm, a rugged sort of confidence, and a grin that could light up the darkest rooms. Despite the less-than-ideal introduction, we found ourselves chatting right there in the middle of the path, as if we hadn't almost collided moments before. So, do you always throw yourself in front of bikes for fun, or is today a special occasion? He teased, his smirk never fading. Ha! First time for everything, I shot back, shaking my head. And just like that, an ordinary day turned into the start of something completely unexpected. I usually pay more attention to my surroundings, I said, trying to hide how embarrassed I was. Paul, he said, holding out his hand. I shook it and smiled. Nice to meet you, Paul. I'm Barbara. Let me guess, you're one of those creative types, right? You have that artsy vibe, he said with a knowing look. I laughed. Is it that obvious? Yeah, I'm a designer. I mostly work on apps. Knew it, he grinned like he had just won a game. I work in car sales. Not as exciting, but it pays the bills. We kept talking, sharing little details about our lives. The conversation was so easy, as if we had known each other for years instead of just a few minutes. When it was finally time to say goodbye, we exchanged numbers. As I walked away, I felt this strange feeling in my stomach. Excitement, maybe? I wasn't sure. After that day in the park, Paul and I started seeing each other more and more. At first, it was just casual coffee meetups after work. But soon, those turned into late-night dinners, then full weekends together. It all happened so fast, yet it felt completely natural, like it was meant to be. One evening, after a long day at the studio, I came home and was surprised to find Paul already there, cooking dinner. The apartment was filled with the smell of something delicious. For a moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. It felt so right. "Hey, you're home early," I said, dropping my keys on the table and walking into the kitchen. Paul didn't even turn around as he stirred a pot. "Thought I'd surprise you with dinner. You've been working so hard lately. I figured you could use a break." I smiled and wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my head against his back. "You're amazing, you know that?" He chuckled and turned around, giving me a playful bow. "Only the best for my girl. Now go get changed. Dinner's almost ready." That night, as we sat eating the surprisingly good meal Paul had made, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "I've been thinking," Paul said, his voice more serious than usual. "About what?" asked, suddenly feeling a little nervous.
Us.
"Everything we have going on," he said, gesturing around the apartment. "I think it's time we take the next step." My heart skipped a beat. Next step? Yeah, moving in together for real this time. No more going back and forth between apartments. I sat quietly for a moment, letting it sink in. It was a big step. But wasn't this what I wanted too? "Are you sure?" I finally asked. "This is a big commitment." Paul reached across the table and took my hand. His eyes were steady, full of certainty. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said. "I love you, and I want to make this work, really work." The way he said it melted away any doubts I had. I smiled. "Okay, let's do it." And just like that, we started a new chapter together. Finding a place was easier than we expected. Before we knew it, we were signing a lease for a bigger, brighter apartment in a neighborhood that was new to both of us. It was exciting, decorating, picking out furniture, and making the space truly ours. But with the new apartment came new challenges. The honeymoon phase couldn't last forever. A few months after we moved in, we had our first real test as a couple. One evening, Paul sat down next to me on the couch, his face serious. "Can we talk, Barbara?" I muted the TV and turned to face him. "What's up?" "It's about us. Our future," he said, hesitating before continuing. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want our life to look like." "Okay," I said, waiting for him to go on. "I think it's time we talk about you maybe stepping back from work, focusing more on us, our home." I felt a rush of frustration. "Step back from work? Paul, you know how much my career means to me." "I do. I really do," he said. "But don't you see? We could have so much more if we focused on building a life together, the traditional way." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "The traditional way?" I repeated, feeling a knot in my chest. "Paul, I love you, but I can't just give up on my dreams, on my career. That's not the life I want." My voice was calm, but firm. Paul sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I just thought you'd want the same things." And in that moment, I realized just how different our dreams really were. I knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was just the first of many. And each time we talked, it got harder. Yes, we loved each other. But sometimes, love wasn't enough to fix two very different ideas of the future. One evening, I was finishing up a project on my laptop when Paul came home. He looked like he had something on his mind. He tossed his keys onto the table, the sound louder than usual in the quiet apartment. "So, babe, we need to talk," he said, his voice more serious than I'd heard in a while. I closed my laptop, already sensing this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. "What's up?" I asked. "It's about us, about how we're living," he said, avoiding my eyes. I've been thinking maybe it's time we start planning for the future. You know, kids.
I stared at him. Kids? Paul, you know how important my job is right now. We've talked about this.
Why are you bringing it up again? I try to keep my voice calm, but I felt frustration creeping in. Because things change.
People change.
Isn't it normal to want a family? To want my wife to be more present at home? His words hit me like a slap. So what? You want me to just drop everything? My career? Just so I can fit into your idea of a normal family? I shot back, the hurt clear in my voice. It's not like that, he said quickly. I just mean that's how families work. The wife takes care of the home, and the husband provides. It's normal. His voice was rising slightly now. Normal for who, Paul? Because that sure doesn't sound like the life I want, I said firmly. We're supposed to be a team, remember? But it wasn't just Paul. His mother, Mrs. Thomas, lived a little too close for comfort. And before I knew it, she had turned our home into her personal project. Her visits became more frequent, each one making me feel smaller, like I wasn't doing enough. One afternoon, she showed up unannounced. Again. I was in the middle of work when I heard the door open. The sight of her made my stomach twist. Hello, dear, she said sweetly, stepping inside. I just thought I'd drop by, to see how you're managing. Her tone was polite, but there was something in it that rubbed me the wrong way. I'm managing just fine, thanks, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Actually, I'm really busy with work right now. She looked past me at my laptop and sighed. Oh, still glued to that screen, I see. She glanced around the apartment, eyes scanning every corner like she was inspecting a hotel room. Then she ran a finger along the table, checking for dust. And what about Paul? She added, shaking her head slightly. Shouldn't you be taking care of him? Making sure he has a nice home to come back to. I clenched my jaw. Paul is a grown man, I said, keeping my tone as calm as possible.
He can take care of himself.
And this home? It's just fine. I felt my patience slipping away. It's just when I was your age, my husband and home were my top priority, she said, her voice full of judgment. Maybe if you spent less time on that computer and more time in the kitchen, things would be different. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. My hands itched to respond with sharp words, but I held them back. Thanks for the advice, I said flatly, but I think we're managing just fine. She huffed, clearly not happy with my response, and continued walking around my home, inspecting everything like she was grading me. After what felt like forever, she finally left, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. But the pressure from Paul and his mother didn't stop. It felt like they had teamed up, working together to push me into a life I didn't want. They didn't care about my career, my independence. They just wanted me to fit into their idea of a perfect wife. I remember the moment I decided to pretend to quit my job. It felt like giving up, but I had a plan. Sitting across from Paul at our small dining table, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The air between us was thick, heavy with all the arguments we had already had about this. Paul, we need to talk, I said carefully. He looked up, surprised but curious.
About what?
I've been thinking a lot about what you and your mom have been saying about family priorities, I said slowly, making sure to control my tone. He leaned in slightly, and I forced myself to smile. I've decided to quit my job and focus on us, on our home. The lie felt like poison in my mouth. For a second, Paul just stared at me. Then his face lit up with a relieved smile. Really, babe? That's amazing. I knew you'd come around. This is going to be so good for us. Yeah, great, I said, my voice hollow. But I had a plan. Earlier that week, I had spoken to my boss. He had been understanding and, instead of letting me go, he offered me a way to work remotely. It was my lifeline, and I grabbed it without hesitation. So, every morning after Paul left for work, I opened my laptop and continued doing what I loved, designing. My work became my escape, a small piece of freedom that kept me sane. I also opened a secret savings account, adding money from every project I completed. It was my backup plan, my proof that I wasn't truly giving in. I was living a double life, playing the role of the perfect wife when Paul was around and being the successful designer I had always been when he wasn't. Then one day, everything almost fell apart. I was deep in work when I heard a sudden knock on the door. My heart jumped.
Paul.
He was home early. Panicking, I slammed my laptop shut and shoved it under the couch just as he walked in. "Hey," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "What's up? Why are you home so early?" I tried to sound casual. "Meeting got cancelled," Paul said, tossing his keys on the counter. He looked at me closely, then smirked. "What's up with you? You look guilty as sin." My heart pounded, but I forced a laugh. "Just surprised to see you, that's all. Wasn't expecting you back so soon." He shrugged, letting it go. Thankfully. But that moment was too close. Too close. That night, as we lay in bed, Paul turned to me with a serious look. "I've been thinking, since you're home all day now, maybe we should start talking about, kids." There it was again. The topic that never seemed to go away. No matter how much I did, no matter how much I pretended, it was never enough. "Kids, Paul?
We've talked about this.
I'm not sure now is the right time." "But why not?" He cut me off, his voice laced with frustration. "It's the perfect timing. You're at home. We're stable. What's holding us back?" "Everything." I wanted to scream it.
My job.
My independence. The fact that our whole relationship was hanging by a thread. But instead, I swallowed the words and forced a smile. "We'll see, Paul. Let's just take things one step at a time." For months into this so-called experiment of living on Paul's salary alone, the cracks were showing. Big, ugly cracks that we couldn't ignore anymore. Our finances were a disaster. I hadn't touched the secret savings I'd been building. I still hoped naively that Paul would realize we needed a change. But when I finally brought it up, it didn't go the way I hoped. "Paul, we can't keep going like this. We're barely making ends meet. I think it's time I went back to work," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He slammed his coffee cup down on the table, his face darkening. "Back to this again?" he snapped. "I told you we're fine. You just need to cut back on spending." "Cut back?" I repeated, barely believing what I was hearing. "Cut back on what, Paul? We're already down to the basics. I haven't bought anything for myself in months." "That's not the point," he shot back. "You just need to learn how to manage better. My mom raised a whole family on less."
His words cut like knives.
I was furious. How could he not see the reality of our situation? Before I could argue, his phone rang. He answered, nodded a few times, then hung up with a sigh. "Mom's coming over tomorrow. She thinks she can give us some tips on budgeting," he said, as if that would magically fix everything.
Great.
A lecture on saving money from the woman who still did her grown son's laundry. The next day, Paul's mom, Mrs. Thomas, arrived with all the grace of a bulldozer. She didn't even say hello before jumping straight into a long lecture about saving money and making sacrifices. Her voice grated on my nerves. "Dear, when Paul was a boy, we didn't have much, but we made it work. Maybe you need to rethink your priorities," she said in a tone that made my skin crawl. I took a deep breath, trying to stay polite. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Thomas, but I'm very careful with our expenses." She waved a hand, dismissing my words as if they didn't matter. "It's all about sacrifices. Maybe less dining out, more home-cooked meals. Every little bit helps," she added, nodding like she had just solved all my problems. Dining out? We hadn't set foot in a restaurant in months. Her assumptions were not only wrong but insulting. "I'm fully capable of managing our home without extreme measures," I said, my patience running out. "What we really need is more income." Mrs. Thomas shook her head, smirking. "My son works hard enough. It's not about earning more, it's about spending less. You'll see, with a few adjustments, you'll manage just fine." The adjustments she suggested were ridiculous. "Clip coupons," she said, as if I hadn't already searched every store flyer and app for discounts. "Cook in bulk," she added, as if our freezer wasn't already packed with stretched-out meals. By the time she left, I was furious. Not only had Paul ignored my concerns, But now his mother was lecturing me about finances like I was a child. And the worst part? She still thought milk cost $1. After the disaster with Mrs. Thomas, I had enough. I needed real advice from someone who actually understood me. Someone who wouldn't judge. So I called my mom. I barely got 2 sentences out before Paul stormed into the room, his face twisted with anger. He must have heard me talking about going back to work. "Who are you complaining to now?" he snapped, yanking the phone from my hand so hard I nearly lost my balance. I stared at him in shock. "Give me back my phone, Paul. I'm talking to my mom." "Oh, so now you're airing our dirty laundry? What's next? You gonna tell her I'm a terrible husband?" he spat, his words sharp, cutting deep. "We're discussing our options, not you." I shot back, my own anger rising. "And since when is talking to my mom a crime?" The argument exploded from there, words flying like bullets. Before I knew it, Paul stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. He disappeared for hours, leaving me alone, angry, hurt, and worried. When he finally came back, it was late. He reeked of booze, his face dark with bitterness. And the look in his eyes, it was something I had never seen before. I had never seen him like this before. "You think you're better than me, huh? Making more money, trying to show me up?" Paul slurred, his words sloppy, but full of anger. "That's not true, and you know it," I said, trying to stay calm. "We're struggling, Paul. I thought if I worked, we'd have a little more breathing room." He let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "Oh, so now it's my fault? I'm not good enough? Well, listen here, if you don't like how things are, you can just leave." I stared at him, my mind racing. Disbelief. Anger. Hurt. "It's 2 a.m., Paul. You're drunk. You're not thinking straight," I said, trying to de-escalate. "Leave," he shouted, stumbling toward me. I had no choice. I grabbed the essentials, my phone, my wallet. When I reached for my purse, he snatched it away. "Where do you think you're going with that?" "That's my money in there," he snapped. His words hit me like a slap. I had saved that money for my secret work, but arguing felt pointless. Without another word, I called a taxi and walked out into the cold night. The fresh air was sobering. As I checked into a nearby hotel, reality sank in. This was it. There was no going back. The marriage I thought I had, the future I had tried to build with Paul, it was gone. But I still had something. My strength. My skills. A little bit of savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. The next morning, I walked into a lawyer's office, my heart pounding. Anxiety and determination fought inside me, but I knew I had to do this. The lawyer, a serious-looking man with a surprisingly kind voice, listened as I told him my story. He didn't waste time, pulling out paperwork and explaining everything step by step. "You're making a brave choice," he said, sliding a pen toward me. "Sign here, here, and here. We'll take care of the rest." I took a deep breath and signed each paper with a steady hand. It was official. I was filing for divorce. Returning to the apartment felt surreal. Paul was still passed out on the couch, completely unaware that everything was falling apart. I moved quickly and quietly, packing my life into boxes and suitcases. With every item I picked up, it felt like I was shedding a piece of the past. As I zipped up my last suitcase, Paul groaned and blinked his eyes open. "Hey, where's my beer?" he mumbled, his voice rough. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the moment. "Beer is the last thing you should be worried about, Paul," I said. He sat up, squinting at the packed bags around me. "What's this? You leaving?" "Something like that," I replied, holding out the divorce papers. "Consider this my final goodbye." He took the papers, his smirk growing as he scanned them. "This is a joke, right? You'll come back, apologize, and maybe, just maybe, I'll take you back if you promise to behave." A bitter laugh escaped me. Apologize? For what? For finally standing up for myself. I shook my head.
"No, Paul.
This is real. I'm done." The smirk faded. He tossed the papers aside, his expression darkening. "You think you can just walk out? You'll be back," he scoffed. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. A quiet peace settled over me. I won't, I said firmly. And you'll see, I'm better off without you. With that, I grabbed my bags and walked out of the apartment for the last time. My new place was small. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. It was close to my old job, a reminder of the life I was rebuilding, on my own terms. I knew what I had to do next. I picked up my phone, my heart pounding with both nerves and excitement. I dialed my old boss, hoping there was still a place for me. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was wondering, would it be possible for me to come back to work? There was a pause. Then the familiar voice on the other end said, "Of course. We've missed your talent around here. When can you start?" Relief washed over me. Really? That's amazing. I can start immediately. Thank you so much. The joy in my voice was unmistakable. Going back to work felt like coming home. My colleagues welcomed me back with open arms. Slipping back into the world of design, creativity, and teamwork was exhilarating. I was where I belonged, doing what I loved, surrounded by people who respected and valued me. One afternoon, after a successful project presentation, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Curious, I answered. "Hello." "Barbara, it's me, Paul." His voice sent a small jolt through me, but I felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, just distance. "Paul," I said, my tone neutral. "What do you want?" I heard you're doing well." "That's good," he said awkwardly. "I lost my job. Things are tough. I was thinking, maybe you could help me out. Maybe we could try again." The audacity. After everything, he still thought he could lean on me? Use me as a safety net? "Paul," I said calmly, "that part of my life is over. And for the first time in a long time, I truly felt free. I'm moving forward, not backward. You should do the same," I said firmly. There was silence on the other end. Then, finally, a heavy sigh. "Yeah, I guess you're right. Take care," Paul muttered before hanging up. I stared at my phone for a moment, then took a deep breath. A wave of empowerment washed over me. This was it. I had closed that chapter for good. Now it was time to start fresh, to build a life that was truly mine. Life after Paul became about rediscovering me, who I was outside of a failed marriage, who I wanted to be. I reclaimed my independence, my identity, and most importantly, my happiness. I picked up new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and slowly began opening myself up to the idea of dating again. But this time, things were different. I had a new sense of self-worth. I knew what I deserved, and I was never going to settle for less again.